Welcome back to the Chad Hasty Show. Joining us on the phones right now, Republican strategist Matt Mackowiak. Matt, good morning. How are you?
Good morning. I'm doing great. How about you?
Doing all right. It's a pretty busy day so far. It's only 9:36, and it's already very, very busy.
No doubt, man. No doubt. It's a crazy news day already.
Let's I guess I'll just go ahead and get. I don't know how much you've had a chance to look beyond the headlines on this Supreme Court ruling, 7-2 decision in favor of this Christian baker out in Colorado who had refused to make a cake and deliver that cake to a same-sex wedding. Supreme Court, to me, that's a huge decision, a 7-2 decision in favor of the baker in this case.
Yeah, that's right. Obviously, religious liberty and religious conscience protections have been very much under assault or certainly under question over the last few years. We remember I think there was a similar situation in Oregon where there was a caterer that was asked to bake a cake for a gay wedding. I don't remember where that legal challenge where it stands at the moment. But clearly this was not just an important decision in the sense that it settles, at least in a narrow way, the question of whether a person in business has any rights at all to religious liberty and to personal conscience. But even more so, I think that it was a 7-2 decision. You might have expected this to be 5-4, perhaps 6-3. In this case, you only had two dissenting, and they were dissenting against the Colorado Civil Rights Commission, claiming that by ordering this individual to do the cake for the gay wedding and deliver it, that they were violating that person's rights under the First Amendment. So exactly what it means. Based on what I've seen this morning, it sounds like it's actually a somewhat narrow decision, and that it's not necessarily directly addressing whether a business can refuse to serve gay and lesbian people. It's really more a question of whether the First Amendment rights in this particular case were violated. So,
So it applies to this case only, not other cases, possibly.
Yeah, these things are hard to analyze in the minutes after they come out, but there's going to be obviously a lot analyzed about whether this has sweeping ramifications. I think it's a actually narrow victory and maybe perhaps a short-term victory. My suspicion is this will lead to additional cases with minor differences, and the court is ultimately going to have to resolve it. But this is another reminder why the Anthony Kennedy seat is so important on the Supreme Court, and I think here in the next 3 weeks we're going to know whether he is going to remain for another term, at least another term, or retire, which there's been some speculation that he may retire given his age.
We heard that last year too, and obviously he's still there. Are you hearing anything towards where he's moving in that direction of retirement?
I'm not really, and I'll say that one of the things I've heard from federal judges I know and people who watch this stuff closely, and conservative leaders in the sort of the judicial sort of community, and is that the more people talk about it, the less likely he is to retire. If he feels like he's being pushed, he's not going to do it. Now, the question as to why he might do it now, not only is age part of it, but secondarily, he was appointed by Reagan, and so oftentimes these justices generally want to retire under a president of the same party that appointed them. And so that's an opportunity he has now. And of course, there is a scenario where the Democrats could take the Senate back, making it impossible to confirm a Republican judge in the second 2 years of President Trump's first term. So, again, I don't think that's likely. So he may hang on. It's hard to know. It's really probably going to be a decision he's going to make with his family. But it would be a massive political fight over the next several months, because this is not, like replacing Scalia or a liberal justice. This is the only swing vote on the Supreme Court, and so it would be hugely significant whenever his term on the Supreme Court ends, and however it ends.
Yeah, absolutely. The president was out tweeting this morning, Rudy Giuliani yesterday on television, saying that the president, if he wanted to, he could pardon himself. Giuliani sort of walked that back, I think, this morning in saying, but he would never do that. He's not even thinking about that. Trump tweeted this morning that he could, but why would he do that? He's not guilty of anything. I know a lot of heads are spinning right now around this. Do you think at the end of the day this is just bluster from the president and trying to tweak some people maybe?
I don't know what it is. It's not helpful, I can tell you that. Obviously, the president and his legal team know more about this than the average person does.
Yeah.
But no one knows as much as the special counsel and his team knows. I remain perplexed as to the value of Rudy Giuliani going on television. Perhaps his job is to make sure Republicans remain deeply suspicious of the special counsel, but I certainly believe that there are significant questions about the scope, why this thing continues to go on. It was intended to investigate Russian collusion between the Trump campaign and the Russian government, and there's been absolutely no evidence presented that shows that. You have all kinds of other things. You have, questions about lobbying that predated the presidential campaign, and other people who've had their own problems, but nothing that directly connects to the reason we're in this whole thing. This whole thing began. So, as to whether he can pardon himself, I don't know. I mean, look, what I would say is the pardon power in the United States, based on the Constitution, is unlimited. And so most legal scholars that I've seen have said that basically any pardon is allowable. Keep in mind, Bill Clinton pardoned Mark Rich on his last few days in office and for what appeared to be I guess we have to say a bribe. And I don't believe anyone's challenged successfully the power to pardon that individual for that purpose. Now, that said, I don't believe the pardon power. Personally, I don't believe the pardon power was ever intended to be used to benefit a president personally or his family members. But look, here's the more important thing, Chad, and that is here in the next 48 hours, we're going to see the Inspector General report at the Justice Department released. It's going to look back over the last 2.5 years. It's going to answer a lot of questions, I think, about this inquiry, about the Clinton email investigation, about how the FBI has conducted itself, about how the Justice Department's conducted itself, about how Comey has done his job, how Rod Rosenstein has done his job. It may not answer every question, but it's going to answer a lot of questions. And I suspect it's going to put the Mueller special counsel inquiry on its back heels. And the question this week, I think, is going to be, is President Trump going to take decisive action based on the Inspector General report to either fire Rosenstein and put someone else in to oversee the Mueller, or perhaps to order Rosenstein to fire Mueller, which I suspect he won't do, and then fire Rosenstein and put someone in who would fire Mueller. Those are the big questions, I think, this week or perhaps next week that we may have answers to. But either way, the Inspector General report is going to be hugely significant this week. We're going to have to see exactly what it says, but it's something that a very respected, independent person named Horowitz has been working on for several months, and it's finally here. And the reason we know it's here is that there's a U.S. Senate committee hearing on Wednesday to examine the report and its findings.
Get ready for another busy week.
Unbelievable. Never stops.
That's right. Matt, tell folks how they can sign up for your newsletter and also what your latest podcast is about.
Absolutely. We have a morning newsletter that we do for Texas, for the entire state, called Must Read Texas. 3,000 Texans subscribe and receive it in their inbox every weekday morning. You can sign up even for 1 week free trial at mustreadtexas.com. The podcast is called Mac on Politics. It's with the Washington Times. You can find it anywhere you find podcasts, iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher, even on the web. Most recent podcast, it was really interesting. It's with actually a friend of mine who is a Republican consultant in Missouri who has been actively opposing the Republican governor, Eric Greitens, for 2 years. And this past week, Greitens resigned on Friday over a scandal. And so we talked to him about that whole ordeal. It's a very interesting conversation. So you can find that at maconpoliticspodcast.com or on those other podcast sites.
Very good. Matt, as always, appreciate your time. We'll visit with you next week.
Thanks, Chad. Have a great week. Take care.
You too. That's Matt Mackowiak.